The day the sky fell apart started like any other, with dust in the teeth and sweat behind the ears. Cale Avon had just pulled a broken wind sensor from the western plot when the first tremor shook the soil beneath his boots. Small at first. Harmless. The kind of quake you learn to ignore on outer moons where tectonics danced like drunk insects. He glanced at the ridge. Clouds low. Dust rising. Nothing unusual. But then came the second tremor. Sharper. Almost intentional. Like the land itself had flinched. Cale straightened. Frowned. Instinct twitched in his spine. He wiped his brow and squinted upward. Something glimmered near the edge of the sun. Too low. Too smooth. Not a comet. Not natural. Cale, his mother's voice rang from the shack porch. Storm rolling in. Get the panels in. He nodded, shielding his eyes. But the thing above the horizon, it wasn't a storm. It was a ship. A big one. The sirens screamed before breakfast. That was the first real sign something was wrong. Tyrest 5 didn't have orbital alarms that worked unless someone with a badge pressed the red button. And nobody around here wore badges anymore. The mining syndicates had pulled out cycles ago, leaving farmers, dust chokers, and the old-timers to fend for themselves. Which meant if the alarms were wailing, someone had come back. And they weren't looking for friends. Cale didn't remember the flash. Only the sound. A vacuum bang that cracked the sky open. A hum that went through bone instead of ear. And then, darkness. Not unconsciousness exactly. Just, stillness. His thoughts froze like air in a cracked pipe. Then cold. Then nothing. He woke to metal. Cold. Unfamiliar. Humming with energy. His head pounded. His arms were shackled, wrists encased in cuffs that buzzed faintly when he tried to move. He was slumped on the floor of a transport cell. The kind he'd only seen in stories. There were no windows. Just a ceiling that pulsed with dull blue light, and bars so smooth they looked liquid. Panic came late, like a delayed broadcast from his body to his mind. Abducted. Ship. Family, gone. Where is this? What? You're awake, said a voice. He jumped. It wasn't human. Not entirely. The voice was soft, feminine, but layered, like it echoed faintly even in silence. He turned his head. Across from him, behind a second barrier, sat a girl. Or at least something shaped like one. Her skin was lavender with a trace of opal glow near her collarbones. Silver-threaded hair hung in tangled braids. Her eyes were too large, irises a shimmering mercury hue. Markings coiled down her arms, natural tattoos in ink-like hues that shifted slowly under the light. She sat cross-legged, spine straight, hands in her lap like she'd been meditating. Cale stared. Who, what are you? She tilted her head, not insulted, just curious. You're the third human they've brought in, she said. The first one didn't last. Second tried to bite a guard. Now it's you. What do they want with us? Depends who buys you. Cale blinked. Buys? She looked away. I shouldn't talk. He swallowed hard, heart pounding against the cuffs. Are we, slaves? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The next 12 hours, or days, he wasn't sure anymore, passed in silence. They didn't feed them often. And when they did, it was a paste the color of rust, thick and metallic. Cale choked it down. He saw her do the same, but she made no expression. Like she'd long ago stopped tasting anything. He wanted to ask her name. But didn't. Not yet. Instead, he stared at the patterns on the wall. Sometimes he swore they moved. Living circuitry. Whispering something beneath audible sound. The girl spoke first the next time. They use mind sleep on you. What? Before transport. Wipe the panic, keep you soft. Kale nodded slowly. Maybe. Everything's blurry. She pressed her fingers to the side of her neck. A faint line there pulsed, like a vein of light. You'll remember more later. Usually around the second cycle. The brain resorts. What's a cycle? Her eyes flicked to the ceiling. 16 rotations. Give or take. You've been here that long. Longer. How do you stay calm? She looked at him. Really looked. And said, I don't. Kale learned to listen more than speak. They never saw the slavers' faces. Only helmets. Armor. Voices garbled through translators. One had a limp, the others moved in pairs. Like clockwork. No names. No variants. And in that rhythm, Kale started noticing things. The way she never slept. Not really. She sat in trance, eyes half closed, breathing slow. Like she was dreaming in pieces. The way her markings changed color. Darker when she was afraid. Pale when she was calm. One night, or what felt like night, he finally asked. Do you have a name? A long pause. Then, Naire. It settled in his mouth like a secret. Kale, he offered. I know. How? She pointed to a strip on his collar. Faint lettering. Syndicate tagged. He rubbed it, embarrassed. Right. I think it suits you. You don't even know what it means. It doesn't have to mean something to feel right, she said. Then she smiled, tiny, brief, and Kale felt something strange twist in his chest. A week passed. Or maybe longer. Then the turbulence hit. A jolt sent the ship rocking sideways, flinging Kale into the wall of his cell. He hit the corner hard, gasping. Blood from his temple slicked his cheek. Guards shouted in some language he didn't know. The lights flickered. Then silence. When he looked up, she was kneeling by the bars between them, her hand reaching through. Hesitantly, he crawled closer. Their fingers met. And for the first time, he realized she was real. Not a hallucination. Not a dream from some pain-induced stupor. Naire. A girl from a different world. And somehow the only anchor he had left. That night, they talked. Not about the slavers. Not about escape. About before. Kale told her about Tyrest's twin sons. The way the sky turned violet-orange when dusk hit, the scent of grain after the first storm, the cool hum of his mother's voice reading old star myths. She listened. Eyes wide. We didn't have skies like that, she said. Where are you from? Doesn't matter, she whispered. Why? Because it doesn't exist anymore. The silence after that wasn't empty. It was sacred. A few cycles later, everything changed. A new prisoner was brought in. Not human. Not like her either. Massive. Reptilian. Half-conscious from stun drugs. He was thrown into the far cell. Bleeding. Then the ship slowed. Paused. And the lights shifted to red. Naire stood fast, her markings flashing like a warning. They're docking, she said. Where? She closed her eyes. I can't tell. Too far. Too shielded. But this isn't a syndicate port. So they're selling us. Kale's stomach twisted. All of us. The new one will be bought by fighters. Blood arena types. You. Maybe labor. Maybe experiments. What about you? They'll keep me, she said quietly. They think I'm worth more alive than sold. Why? She hesitated. Because I'm not supposed to exist. He stared. You're a hybrid. No, she said. I'm, from a line that was ended. Royal-blooded, once. My kind were executed. All of us. Or so they thought. Kale's breath caught. I was hidden. Raised off-grid. Until I wasn't. He sat back, stunned. Why tell me now, he whispered. Nyrea's eyes glowed faintly. Because when the ship lands, we won't be in the same cell. And I don't want you to think I was lying. He didn't sleep after that. He just stared at the place where her hand had touched his. The auction dock was loud, blinking with screens, languages, prices. Kale couldn't understand the announcements. But he saw enough. Slaves in rows. Owners with tablets. Negotiations made with nods and silent codes. Nyre stood 3 rows down, her arms bound, head high. Even in chains, she looked like royalty. But her eyes, they searched. When they found his, something in him clicked. Not like falling. Like knowing. Like her gaze said, I found you in the dark. I'll find you again. Then the guards pulled him away. The doors hissed shut behind them. And for the first time, Kale Avon prayed. Not to any god he remembered. Just to the memory of her hand in his. She didn't cry when they separated them. She didn't flinch when the cuffs were tightened or when the guards spoke in clipped binary. She didn't blink as they dragged her past the auction platform, through shimmering biometric gates, past screens flashing with unfamiliar currencies and species assessments. But inside? Inside she was screaming. Not from fear. Not even pain. But from the way he had looked at her, Kale, in those last moments. He had believed in her. Trusted her. And now she would disappear from him like all the others had disappeared from her. They brought her to a private chamber. Not a cell. That, more than anything, scared her. The room was too clean. Too quiet. It smelled like antiseptic and power. Walls lined with obsidian metal hummed with faint energy pulses. Surveillance nodes hovered in corners, blinking without pattern. She was alone. No chains now. But not free. Not even close. She sat on the edge of a cot she didn't trust. A glass of water she didn't dare touch sat nearby. Minutes passed. Or hours. And then, finally, the door hissed open. The being that entered was tall. Willowy. Humanoid in shape, but with eyes too wide and too still. His voice, when he spoke, came layered, like 2 chords out of tune. Subject 9, he said. Nyre didn't answer. We thought you dead. She tilted her head. You hoped I was. A flicker of something behind those pale eyes. Annoyance? Regret? No, this one didn't feel. Your bloodline is extinct. Then this is all a dream, she said calmly. He ignored that. Pulled a small tablet from his coat. Tapped it. The hum in the walls shifted. We will extract the sequence. What comes after is up to you. I won't survive extraction. He looked up. Correct. She breathed slowly. Then you'll lose the only living trace you have. That is acceptable, he said. She didn't move. Didn't beg. But something inside her cracked. Because somewhere across the ship, behind walls and gates and cold calculation, there was a boy who had spoken gently, who had flinched when she bled, who had offered his name like a gift instead of a label. Kale Avon. She'd felt the warmth of his hand like a son she thought her kind had long forgotten. And now they would kill her. And he would never know why. But fate is a strange thing. It comes sometimes not like thunder, but like dust on a breeze. It came in the form of a whisper in the wall. A malfunction. A ripple. A breath. Naire heard it. Not with ears. With the part of her mind that had never been trained, that had been born knowing frequencies, resonances, how electricity could carry memory if you only listened long enough. And the wall whispered, door unlocked. 5 minutes. Someone moved it. Someone still watches. Her heart stuttered. Kale. No, it couldn't be him. But someone had made a choice. And now she had one too. Naire ran. Not like prey. But like fire. She tore through the outer door, sprinting barefoot down corridors she hadn't seen in years but remembered. Her body moved with purpose born of fear sharpened into precision. Alarms didn't sound. Yet. But they would. She reached a junction and paused. There. Left. Storage deck 7. If she had one chance, she'd find him first. She found him slumped in a cargo cell. Slavers hadn't sold him after all, probably too human. Too soft. Too dangerous to waste but too unknown to risk transferring. He looked up, dazed. Naire? And then something happened she hadn't planned. She hugged him. Her arms wrapped around his shoulders and her forehead pressed to his temple, and she didn't care that he smelled like iron and dust and fear. He was warm. Real. Breathing. He stiffened, then hugged her back. Not like a boy hugging a girl. Like a drowning man reaching for air. They didn't talk much after that. Not then. Just ran. Through half-lit corridors, past drowsy sensor drones she cloaked with last-minute static bursts, into the shuttle bay that hadn't seen use in months. She cracked the console. His hands hovered near hers, warm and shaking. You're not just a prisoner, he breathed. I never said I was. You're something else. She looked at him. Not at his lips, though she remembered the shape of his voice when he'd whispered her name. Not at his eyes, though they glowed faintly with confusion and something close to awe. She looked at his hands. Rough. Scarred. Not from war, from life. You make me forget I'm not supposed to feel, she said. And before he could answer, she launched the shuttle. Space opened like a wound. The slaver ship vanished behind them, shrinking like a memory too heavy to carry. They didn't speak for a long time. Not because there was nothing to say. But because the silence between them had stopped being empty. And started feeling sacred. Where are we going? He asked eventually. She tapped coordinates. Far edge of the Minari drift. Unmonitored, cold. But alive. Somewhere no one thinks to look. Will they follow us? She didn't answer. Because she didn't know. Instead, she asked, if they do, would you run with me again? He didn't hesitate. I'd run with you anywhere. They landed on a small moon whose name had long since been forgotten. Trees with crystalline leaves rustled in low gravity. Purple dusk fell in slow motion. They camped beside a stream that hummed with resonance, not water, but something richer, like melted stars. Kale stared into it, awestruck. Naire didn't sleep. Not because she didn't want to. But because she was watching him. His profile against the firelight. The slope of his neck. The way he sat, as if he'd been taught to always keep one foot ready to move, even while resting. He turned, caught her gaze. Held it. You know, he said softly, back in that cell, I thought maybe I made you up. Like my mind invented you to survive. She smiled. I thought you were a ghost. He grinned, sheepish. Not much of one. No, she said, moving closer, her voice barely more than breath. You're not a ghost. She reached out. Her fingers brushed his cheek. Slowly. Deliberately. You're real. And that terrifies me. When their lips met, it wasn't fast. It wasn't desperate. It was gentle. Like a promise made with breath and nothing else. And when she pulled away, he whispered, "We're going to make it, aren't we?" And for the first time in her life, she didn't say, "I don't know." She said, "Yes." Orion Reese was gardening when the message arrived. His hands were buried in the dry soil of Dars 12, a nothing planet whose winds howled louder than its people. He was trying to coax food out of a place that hadn't bloomed in decades. He liked that. Nothing expected him to succeed. He never did. But then the wind changed. A pulse blinked in the sand near his shovel, his comslate buried there for years. No calls. No contacts. He hadn't been reachable since he'd left his life behind. So when it glowed red, he knew. It wasn't an accident. He dug it out, flipped it open. A single file. A photo. Kale. 16. Soft-eyed. Strong-chinned like his mother. Shot in dim light, cuffed, collared. Beneath it, a simple phrase. "They took him. He asked for you." Orion sat down slowly in the dust, the wind pressing against his back like an old enemy. He hadn't spoken Kale's name aloud in years. He hadn't earned the right. But now the only thing louder than the wind was the sound of blood rising in his ears. He didn't go to the authorities. He didn't go to the Interplanetary Peace Council. He went to his own past. Ghosts, after all, hunted ghosts best. They called her, the Glass Widow. Irisa Trin. Once a slicer for the Syndicate. Now a memory broker on the Hollow Station. She owed him 3 favors. He came to collect the 4th. "Kale Avon," he said as soon as he stepped into her lightless den. She didn't blink. "Your son." He nodded once. She exhaled smoke into a shape that almost looked like guilt. "I thought you left that name behind." "I did," he said. "But he never left mine." She sighed. Tapped at her terminal with 4 cybernetic fingers. "The boy's name has crossed 2 auctions. The last ship tagged was a Talvathron slaver route. Registry corrupted. Black sector. Who bought him? Unknown. But not for public resale. That meant one thing. Private collector. Or worse, bloodline retrieval." She leaned in. "You want my advice?" "No," Orion said. "Then take it anyway, don't follow this path, Reese. There's no redemption waiting for you on the other side. Just ghosts and ash." He turned to go. "I already live with ghosts," he said. "I'd rather not add my son to them." The plan was simple. Break into a slaver manifest vault. Steal the last logged destination. Track the buyer. Burn anyone in the way. But he needed a ship. He hadn't piloted in years. And worse, he needed a pilot he could trust. Which meant turning to the last person he ever wanted to see again. Yuria Vel. He found her at the edge of the Veil Run, docking a freighter onto a crumbling orbital ring. She looked at him like someone seeing a ghost with her own name carved into it. "No," she said immediately. "Absolutely not." He didn't plead. He just said, "They took my son." She froze. And in that second, the fire between them flickered back to life. Not rage. Something older. Something unfinished. They flew. 2 old souls in a ship built for chaos. The closer they got to the trail, the more fragmented it became. Nothing was left intact. Data burns. Sealed gates. Misfires in transmission logs. Someone had covered their tracks well. Orion started having dreams again. Not of death. Of him. A small boy with coppery hair who laughed like sunlit rivers. Kale at 5. Kale at 10. Kale, asking him to stay. Orion never had. Because he was trying to keep him safe. But safety had become silence. And silence had cost them everything. On the 17th night, Orion sat in the dark of the flight deck, staring at old photos, barely breathing. Yuria came in. Didn't speak. Just sat beside him. You left because you thought it was the only way, she said quietly. I left because I was a coward. No, she whispered. Cowards run. You vanished. There's a difference. He looked at her. Really looked. You still believe in me? She didn't smile. But her hand found his. And held. They found the syndicate drop point 3 nights later. And the wreckage. Blackened metal. Emptied cells. Burn patterns from plasma scythes. But no bodies. No Kale. Not yet. But one thing remained. A set of painted marks on the escape hatch. Kale's name. Carved into the edge, beside another. Nire. Orion stared at it. His son hadn't died. He'd run. With someone else. A girl. Someone who made him brave. Someone he was brave for. And something in Orion Reese, the quiet ghost, broke open. Not in grief. In hope. He turned to Yuria. We're not too late. How do you know? She asked. Because they're still running. He smiled faintly. And he's not running alone. Yuria Vel had sworn she'd never work with monsters again. Which made her current assignment, escort Orion Reese across the rift to retrieve his abducted son, the kind of irony that would have made her old instructor laugh himself to death. But it wasn't funny. Not when the man she was flying with used to kill for empires. Not when he used to kill people like her. And not when he looked at her like he remembered something about her she didn't even know she'd lost. They left Hollow Point Station in a stolen cruiser, striped in falsified tags. Just another shadow ship headed for the drift corridors, no questions asked, no identities checked. She sat at the helm, fingers twitching over the navigation panel, trying not to glance sideways. He sat beside her. Too still. Too quiet. Like silence was a second skin. If you keep staring at me like I'm about to attack you, he said finally, you might crash the ship. If I don't stare at you like that, she replied, I'll forget who you are. He tilted his head. Who am I? Yuria turned back to the viewport. The man who killed my cousin. 7 years ago. During the strike at the Coraline relay. Orion was quiet for a long moment. I remember the operation, he said at last. But not him. I never saw faces, he said. Must be nice, she said coldly, only counting bodies. That should have been the end of it. A broken truce. A cold silence. The professional frost of two people locked together for a mission that neither wanted. But grief has strange gravity. So does guilt. And the worst part? So does attraction. The ship broke through the drift line 3 days later. Turbulence jostled them, cosmic static curled against the hull like whispers. Old radiation signatures, wormhole debris, gravity ghosts. Yuria adjusted their heading, biting her lip. She felt him shift behind her. You navigate like a thief. You fly like a ghost, she replied. Ghosts don't fly. Neither do cowards. His silence wasn't angry this time. It was sad. And that made it worse. They made camp in orbit above a derelict station where one of the syndicate auction trails had gone cold. Standard procedure, rest, scan, refuel. Yuria cooked. Not because she wanted to, but because it reminded her of being human. He didn't speak while they ate. Neither did she. Until he said, softly, he was 11 when I left. She glanced up. Kale. Orion nodded. His mother, Mireille, wanted to raise him on peace. I thought if I disappeared, he'd have a chance at being whole. And now, she asked. Now I see I just left him without a father. That night, she couldn't sleep. So she found him standing on the outer deck of the ship, shirtless under the radiation glass, eyes fixed on the stars. His back was a map of old pain. Scars, old burns, embedded circuitry ports long since closed. Evidence of what he'd been turned into. Of what he'd let himself become. But he stood there like he wasn't ashamed. Like maybe, finally, he could stop hiding. Do you regret it? She asked from behind him. He didn't turn. Regret what? What you did. The lives you took. The wars you helped fuel. His voice was soft. Every morning I wake up and hope I've forgotten one more name. Yuria stepped beside him. You remember mine. He turned this time. You were always more than a name. And something in her cracked open. The kiss wasn't expected. It wasn't planned. But when she leaned in and he didn't move away, when her fingers curled into his jaw and his hand slid to the base of her spine, when he kissed her back like someone who hadn't been kissed in years. It felt like truth. Not resolution. Not forgiveness. Just truth. After, she lay beside him in silence, the sheets tangled around their legs, the ship's systems humming softly in the background. We shouldn't have done that, she whispered. We didn't do it because we should, he replied. We did it because we're still alive. She looked at him. And if I'm ordered to turn you in? He looked at the ceiling. Then I'll let you. Just like that. If I made you choose, he said quietly, you'd never forgive yourself. And I've made enough people carry guilt they didn't ask for. Her heart ached in a place she thought was long numb. What if I don't turn you in? He rolled toward her. Then maybe this time, we run toward something instead of away. In the days that followed, they resumed the mission. Tighter. Softer. Sharper. She flew with him like they were made to balance each other. She read his glances. He anticipated her reactions. But the fear was still there, buried deep. The fear that their time wasn't real. That it would vanish once they found the boy. Once the war came back for them. They located the crash site 2 weeks later. A half-burned syndicate transport. No bodies. No captors. Just remnants. A name carved into the wall beside another. Kale plus Naire. Yuria touched the wall. He's alive. Orion said nothing. Just closed his eyes. Breathed. She took his hand again. What now? He opened his eyes. Now we find them. And for the first time, she realized something terrifying. It wasn't just Kale Orion was fighting for anymore. It was her, too.